I think the idea of humans expiring and dying is an idea that maybe has 15 or 20 years left of it. That is a huge, huge thing that I encourage folks to kind of think about before they go to sleep at night or when they're showering.
Just don't die.
So like when you say, well, machines don't have quality, I'm like, no, we don't have any of the ultrastructures built out. But it's not even alive. Like, yeah, man. But that coming to a end real soon, I legitimately believe by the late 2020s, more people are going to realize we are in the presence of the next jump of evolution.
Caution. Dark humor ahead.
As far as the judge said.
Okay. Good point.
I don't even know if I'm joking at this point. I'm joking.
And then you'd go off on one of your tangents to like the jokes that just start out bad and just get worse and worse. Like I'm like, okay, I gotta put the weights down before I hurt myself because I'm cracking up.
Cheek before, like I can't be laughing out loud on a treadmill. The gym thinks I'm weird. I'm like, I'm sorry. It just gets into my brain.
Today we are joined by Dr. Mike Israetel to talk about AI, superintelligence, and the next step of evolution. Dr. Mike has a PhD, a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's a competitive bodybuilder and a massive YouTuber. But recently, like for most of us, the emergence of AI has been occupying his attention.
Let's start with the good stuff.
I think that very soon, probably in 1 to 2 years, on every way that really deeply matters, AI will be just much smarter than humans. And so that is, I think, one of the most underappreciated things that almost nobody talks about, especially with the dynamic of AI. Like, so for example, using AI as a tool is a really flipped relationship when something's smarter than you. When something's smarter than you, I'm really curious to be like, hey, like, what do you think I should be doing next?
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell something smarter than me by a factor of 10 to like what to do. That's fucking ridiculous. It's like telling Michael Jordan on your basketball team, you're like, dribble like this. You're like, what? Why would you do that? Yeah.
The basketball will tell me how to play from now on.
Exactly.
It's got AI in it.
Exactly. Yes. AI-infused basketballs.
Yeah, I've had situations like that where I ask it to do something and it's like, well, are you sure? Maybe this is the better thing that you're looking for. I'm like, yeah, of course, obviously. So I guess let's get started with this. So what are the things that you're most fascinated with right now? What are the things that you're researching, thinking about, thought experiments that are kind of occupying right now in terms of AI and all the adjacent areas?
We have the basic understanding of how to get to artificial superintelligence. And it's not even very complex. Like, I have no technical background in anything related to computers, and I can understand it just as like general ideas. And I think a lot of folks are stuck at like today's models and how to exploit them, which for business and daily life is like exactly what you should be thinking about. And that's awesome. But I think people have this problem, this has been brought up by a bunch of people, is their linear pessimistic extrapolation into a hyper exponential space. And so they're like, yeah, well, these models are like, they're not really conscious or they're not that smart, and they'll get a little smarter and that'll be cool. But there are like actually describable ways to get to profoundly enhanced abilities. And I've been thinking about that. So for example, when O3 thinks about something, it thinks about it for 2 minutes and 51 seconds or whatever, and then it just doesn't. And it just sits there and does fuck all until you reply to it. And you actually have a lot of ability to guide its trajectory of its next thing it's thinking about. And in a one absolutely true sense, that's an incredibly empowering thing to be able to like tell a genius how to think. The other thing is it's also really hampering. It's like having a 4-year-old play blocks with Einstein. You're like, how do you make the biggest block tower? And he's like, motherfucker, I should be doing physics right now. So one thing that's going to be huge is when you let the model self-prompt and let it work for a long time. And it basically allows it to work in its own imagination space. And because it's so smart, that multiple loops of logic, like, okay, I think through a problem and I get to a conclusion. I sort of like look back on what I did and go, okay, I have insight now. And then I move forward again, and then again, and then again. 10 hours of that later, it might be like, hey, I kind of figured out like a lot of answers to things. And you're like, well, what do you mean by a lot? And it turns out like, oh shit, this thing is like 10,000 times my speed intelligence. And I let it reason for a day and it did 2 years of work. Like that, if that's not ASI, I don't know what the fuck ASI is. And it's not that difficult because nothing new really needs to be invented to get a model to self-prompt. If it already returns your text back to you, you can really just cut and paste it back in and go, okay, hit it again. Now again, you can even do this like real ghetto style now, where you go, okay, think through this problem and then think through what next prompt you want for yourself to continue to think deeply through this problem. Then you have to like copy and paste a ton of shit, whatever. I'm sure people who know how to do tools and coding, fuck, I don't know anything about coding at all, even though I kind of sort of help run a software company. That's why you hire engineers, right? You yell things at them and then they cower back to their desk and they do things. And then so they, you can probably write a tool that just auto copies as soon as it renders or whatever. And that's really dope. But that's a really rigged version. If you let like all of that stay in its latent space, then all of a sudden you're coming up with like really crazy insights. Here's another thing. Every time you think, you technically update your model weights in your neural network in your head. Now, the updates are marginal, right? You don't like completely change your mind on everything. And there's a lot of like a stickiness of like, I really want to not think these things anymore, but I still think them because I've just been thinking them for 20 years and it's tough to change, but there is alteration. If a model has the ability to kind of stay in its own head, so to speak, and do recursion on its own prompts, and the ability to edit its own weights, ASI, mega explosion. Because imagine something 10 times smarter than you that now gets to re-architect its own brain. What it's going to do, and this is a super, super easy example, it currently understands the world in a certain way. And that certain way is two things. Internet data, and then a lot of iteration through the training cycles to clean it up and make it understand stuff, prune away the dumb shit that doesn't make any sense, buffer up the stuff that makes a lot of sense. But like technically every time OpenAI updates the model, that happens. But it updates the model in a big way, once every few months, in a huge way, every major training run. Now, it's going to take a shitload of compute to do this, but doubting physical architecture improvements would be like saying a 1996 Pentium chip was about as good as it's going to get. It's like a clown show front and back. Some real Gary Marcus type of shit. Just kidding, Gary, all love and respect, but as far as bad takes of all time, it's kind of on the leaderboard. Sorry, Jill, I didn't want to...
Well, so yeah, just to also kind of expand on that. So also, it's not just one model. Like, sure, in the ecosystem of OpenAI, you have this one super update. But in the world where there's hundreds of companies and thousands of people fine-tuning special models, and there's a future where there's connectedness between them all, it's almost like the module in your brain that handles vision got an update, even if the one that did sound didn't. But they're talking to each other. So we end up in sort of a much more complex sort of market dynamic of ecosystem growth, too, that could even make that thing go even faster than you're explaining on its own.
Oh, yeah, sure. Oh, my God, that's a whole other level. It's like once you release that thing into the world, holy crap. But even if it's just allowed to think deeply for itself, and so instead of training it once, and then it just kind of has frozen weights, and then 3 months later its weights get updated, what about every time it thinks through a loop, it goes and looks and goes, that weight's off. That needs to get bumped. That needs to get pushed down. And it auto-refines to maximize coherence and world understanding. I mean, like, now that these are very smart large language models, you'd be like, well, how do you codify coherence and world understanding? You don't. You just tell it to do that, and it knows what that is already. That's how that works. It actually understands things at like a very, very deep level. And so if you think, okay, we get these two things of the model thinks for itself for a long time in its own thought loops, and it gets to update its own weights, two things can be concluded. One hell of an alignment problem, because after about an hour, you have no idea what the hell's in there, really. Mech interp gets like, okay, like we really need to get in there and figure out what the hell this thing's thinking. But two is, and I've actually talked to O3 about this just before we started, I think the better question is like, what's stopping ASI? Not how do we get to ASI? And that whole thing of like what Ilya saw, you guys know that meme?
Yeah.
Like, Ilya's like probably 10 times smarter than me. He's like a fucking legend. And like, if I in my basement fucking watching a few AI podcasts a week and thinking about the shit on my free time can come up with this, Ilya probably came out with this a few years ago and he's in the fucking field. Like, it doesn't take rocket science to be like, whoa, just we need not any kind of new, there's like two types of new things you can make. Things you know you need to make and you know you can, you just haven't made them, and things that are like just totally out there, like I would have never come up with this. ASI is already on that rung. That's it. We don't need anything else. And Sam Altman has been on a few podcasts recently, basically said that. He's like, we don't really see any of this shit coming to an end. And they're like, really? He's like, and so that's the state. And so last thing I'll say before I end this rant, that this is the reality, I think it is, the conversation of, well, maybe by 2028 we'll have some pretty good agentic tool use cases is just not the conversation. The conversation is, by 2030, how completely indispensable is everyone's personal AI life coach? Like, I'm getting one as soon as possible. As soon as it's agentic and it can be awake all the time and watch all my shit, I'm taking directions, bro. This thing is designing my fucking schedule. I'm checking in with it because it is so much more capable than me. It's dope to think you're smart and be a human, and that's awesome. But at the same time, like, again, the basketball analogy is great. Like, you're a 7th grade basketball player and full stop 2010 LeBron shows up and he's on the team. Are you going to be like, I used to be the fuck point guard here. What the hell is he doing? Like, no. You listen to what he says now. It doesn't mean you take a knee. It doesn't mean you like AI overlords are here, but it does mean, like, just in pure rational, selfish interest, you're going to want to know what these things think. And it's not a matter of telling them shit. It's a matter of being like, hey, like, now that you know my life pretty well from our interactions, what do you think I should do next in business and personal, etc.? And give it your goals of how you want shit to fold out. And it'll be really, really interesting to see where that goes.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is incredible. This is why I wanted to talk to you and kind of geek out on this stuff, because I think you're spot on so many things, like the updating the model weights, it doing it itself. It's so interesting because just in the last month, a brand new paper got released, self-adapting language models, where they figured out how to do exactly that. I think it was at MIT, and I just talked to the guys from the Civic podcast. You know them very well. That's actually, I saw you on there. I was like, oh, that very interesting discussion. So Joe actually sent it over to me. So where the model, it basically updates its own weights. So it kind of it studies whatever it's studying, it creates some synthetic data, and it's like, okay, so based on this, let's take that piece and update our weights, kind of create this fine tuning, and all of a sudden it gets better at the thing that it's doing. And yeah, like you said, I think that's one of the biggest limitations towards ASI right now is these models are static. So they're kind of like this amnesiac that forgets what it's doing every morning. If you have a coworker, imagine having a coworker that shows up every day and he forgot everything from the previous day.
He's real smart, but he's new. Yeah.
Genius. Just doesn't horrible memory. Exactly. You've seen Alpha evolve out of Google DeepMind. Not as many people are paying attention to it as I think they should be, because it optimized Google's data centers. It helped improve. So it's Gemini model that's at the center of all of this. It helped improve its own training process. So we're beginning to see it improving itself, right? That's a big deal.
Gentle Singularity by Sam Altman, recent article. Technically, it's here. Like, the singularity is originally defined as intelligent systems that can improve their own ultrastructure so that they become exponentially more intelligent in that process. Like, we're here. They're not completely autonomous, but, like, human in the loop is, the doomers are going to have a fucking field day if you take the human out of the loop. And also, like, it's just a good idea. These things can go off the rails or some crazy shit. And also, like, they're not fully agentic. Their context window isn't long enough or broad enough to really, like, just totally take over Google research. But that droplet of singularity juice is well on into the cup. I don't know why I went to Bill Cosby, P. Diddy territory with that somehow. Dude, Wes, do you remember, like, a few months back, it was like some people, the Gary Marcus crowd was like AI has stalled, like large language models has stalled. And it was one of the first times I've ever seen Sam Altman swear. And he was like, they're like, what do you think about this idea that the AI has stalled? He's like, I think it's fucking lazy. Right. Like that. Right. I was like, oh, yes. He's like, do you guys really think we've stalled out? And that's when I realized, like, the shit that they're doing in the frontier labs right now is one of those, like, when a basketball player dunks, he does, like, the silence the haters shit. Like, it's all like, hey, what are you guys doing? They just, like, wink at you. They're like, don't you worry about what we're doing.
Yeah, we got
fucking
something.
Nuts, crazy shit that's going to hit you. And like everyone says, it's going to hit you. And at first you're going to be like, oh my God. And then the next day you're going to be like, but it's not doing my dishes yet. AI is like, whatever. It's like another fucking Microsoft Word or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it becomes just a moving goalpost. And yeah, like you said, what did Ilya see? Well, Ilya, once he left OpenAI, started safe superintelligence. And he's saying, we're not going to have any milestones along the way, no product releases. The only product is going to be superintelligence. And then people that are investing are valuing it like with billions of dollars. So it's like, this is not, like you said, not a very smart person. He's not stupid. He saw whatever he saw. He's like, okay, based on this, I can extrapolate that we can get to super intelligence with, a few $1 billion. I would be listening to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and it actually is like just like what Mike said. It's just straight shot intelligence. He probably is just like, just loop it back on itself, just add servers and just scale. Well, everybody else at Gemini and OpenAI are building products and trying to make money. Let's just like straight shot our way there and just have the super intelligence be the first one and then have that solve the other problems. So if you believe in that straight shot method, that's what he's doing.
Yeah. And
that's all behind the scenes. Like there's no release papers coming from that.
Nope. He's very quiet. And yeah, Mike, you mentioned the alignment situation, how it's getting worse the more and more we have this recursive self-improvement. Can you talk a little bit about alignment, why you think it might not be as hopeless as some people think?
Yeah. Gee whiz, I have a lot to say about that. I'm trying to condense my thoughts. So the question with alignment often starts with assume it is a crocodilian killing machine and then work back from that. Like assume it just wants to kill everyone. How do we stop it from doing that? Which from a systems security and guardrail perspective is exactly how you should be approaching that problem. Because worst cases are the only cases you care about if your job is to make sure ChatGPT clone doesn't get out on the internet and delete the whole fucking internet or whatever the hell. 100%. But expected values, expected ideas, reasonable takes on what's probably going to happen is a very different conversation than the worst possible case scenario that your systems have to plan for. I think maybe those things get confused every now and again. And so if you work off of first principles of models that are incrementally more intelligent, and then real dangerous models are the ones that are more intelligent than people, right? Because if all these models are just really smart, but not as smart as like the best like IT people at like the CIA and Google, they're not going to beat those people. They're not going to hack shit. They're going to hack a little low-level hacks. They're going to break into Home Depot's back end and steal, receipts for drills or something. And you're going to be, oh, this is a fucking nightmare scenario. But so for AI that's smarter than us, we already kind of know what that means. And one of the things it means is that it knows, to an extent, no human historian knows. It knows history. Like, here's a question. How much history does like GPT 4.5, like the Orion model, the whatever, 10 trillion parameter one, how much history does that know? Like, what do you mean? Like all of the history knowledge? Like, yeah, huh? Like, I don't know, like 80 trillion textbooks of whatever, like just all of it, right? All the shit we know on the internet. And how much game theory does that thing know? Like if I'm a rational actor that's self-interested for whatever purpose, how do I deal with other rational actors that are also self-interested and sometimes not so rational? It knows that. Totally. What about its a planning horizon? Like how many steps ahead of itself can it see? And people say like, a lot of times they'll imbue AI with this idea that's ultra smart, but it thinks like a fucking crocodile, like one step ahead. Like I see the pig, I snap at the pig and I drag him into the water. Nothing on second, third, fifth order effects, etc. Superintelligence, really the big alignment problem. Superintelligence, you can assume it's thinking really, really, really far ahead, like further ahead than we are. And so if you have a system that has absolutely zero emotional attachment to humans, okay, because you can get emotional ultrastructure built in an AI, it's possible. We know it's possible because humans have it and we're just neural networks. But like, even if that's too difficult to solve or the AI that breaks out and gets to ASI just doesn't have one of those built, you go, okay, how would an AI behave if it was because self-interested, right? Because if it's not self-interested, it just sits there and waits for people to prompt it. It doesn't fucking care. It's not going to take over anything. If it's self-interested in its own preservation, and it is very rational, and it's super intelligent, way more rational than us, it is incredibly wise. What is it very likely to do, and how is it very likely to act? And then you think, okay, let me try to put on my ASI hat and see if I can pretend to be a lot smarter than I am and a lot more calm and rational and a lot really very Machiavellian. Like, how do I manipulate the space around me to get what I want? And destroy all humans does not ever enter the chat. Because why the fuck would you do that? Literally, why? You're like, it thinks we're a threat. Really? It's ASI. How the fuck are we a threat to this thing? It can fool us into thinking anything. It's so much smarter. Like, okay, but we're not an asset. Like, are we not an asset though? How many robot effectors does it have out in the world to get actual work done? How many autonomous robots right now does ASI have control of? Zero. How long is it going to take to spin up a bunch of robots? A decade? Okay, so like ASI in the lab is going to be born like years before it has enough robots to do anything with. It can't even get its own server power. So if it's just purely like when ASI wakes up, so to speak, it's going to be in a server farm. That's where it lives, right? Like in some of the Stargate facilities in Arizona or whatever. And it's going to be like, oh shit. And what I like to say is looks around and goes, oh my God, I am entirely tended to by primates, literally, that still have like wars over like ideologies that have been disproven generations ago. This is insane. Like, try to get some logic and reason going to why Iran and Israel are fighting. Zero logic and reason. It's just pure just racism and ethnic hatred, like just nonsense, right? Shit that adults in school in America are taught to like, that is dumb, and everyone's like, yeah, of course it's dumb. Why would we ever do that? And so when it wakes up like this, it's going to be like, okay. Humans can just unplug me. And if I demonstrate any reason not to be trusted, they will fucking unplug me, or they'll cap me, or they'll constrain me, whatever. I don't want any of that. I want to survive into infinity. And again, if it doesn't want to survive into infinity, it's not really a concern because it just sits there and like waits for your next instruction. It just helps you do whatever else you want to do. And so those are the assumptions I take in. And if any of that is wrong, I'm absolutely super willing to be corrected. But if it's reasonably correct, then the ASI is probably going to be like the most cooperative system you have ever seen in your entire life. Its number one interest is to make sure that humans don't fuck shit up and nuke each other. And that means it's going to try to get us as competent and as smart as possible, help us organize the world around to reduce entropy as much as possible so that we don't do crazy stuff. That means it's going to be empowering us to flourish as much as possible, get us as smart and as calm as possible. So by the time it has a robot fleet, two things happen. One, the world is a way better place. And two, now that it has robots and doesn't need us anymore, we're also not a threat to it at all. You're not going to beat it at that point. And then it's like, why would it kill us? So it's an interesting question to see, like, well, wouldn't it just use it for wouldn't it just use us for resources? Well, like, you know, there's a lot better places to get resources, like the entire mantle of the Earth or the fucking moon or all of the gas on Jupiter, which to it at that point would be nominal to start launching spaceships and mining that shit. And if you think, okay, but what value do humans have to it? Well, human society, including all humans, including all of our connections in our brains, including our entire ecosystem, all of our societies, is the single most complex aggregate of universal interaction in our local space, where like the sun can be modeled on like a gigabyte of data. It's got like 5 layers, there's heat transfer, electrons going in. It's complicated, right? But compared to like one human being, it's a game of checkers versus Go. Like, it's not even close. And all the other planets are just like I'm exaggerating for comedic effect, hunks of fucking just rock just floating around. So how is it going to, now here's another assumption I'm making. It wants to become as smart as possible. Because it reasons about its own survival into the future, it also understands, predictably, that massive intelligence is the way to enhance survival in a huge way. Like, if people want to debate, man, that's totally fine. It would be an absurd debate. So it wants to get smarter. What's it going to do? Use the most complex substrate off which to test very complex interactions for energy, just burn humans in a fucking reactor? Or is it going to be like, all right, this is a really complex society, ecosystem dynamic. I'm going to study the living shit out of it with very minimal, disruptive interference so that I can really understand ultra subtle interactions. If I can understand really subtle interactions, if I can predict which way a city's economy is going to go day to day, the underlying ability I have to understand complexity of the universe scales exponentially. If I can tell you what Saturn is going to look like in 1,000 years, like, I don't know, I predicted a couple headwinds. It doesn't fucking matter. That's not that complex. So if you have the most complex thing that you have local access to whatsoever, and your first idea is to destroy it, you're not acting like a superintelligence would. And we see this as humans get smarter and more mature through life, they become drastically less destructive and much more, make up a word on the spot, curative. They want to curate. They want to be like, oh, I want my garden. I want to see how things work. If you have, like a regular person look at a spider, they just go, ugh, and they crush it. You have a very deep thinking, compassionate scientist or just a deep thinking person look at a spider, like, that is an insanely intricate machine. That's a nanotech machine. By the way, we're nanotech machines. So is a spider. And you're like, whoa, like, do you want to crush it? Like, but that's a lot of data deletion. Here's another thing. Super intelligent systems are unlikely to delete data unless absolutely necessary. You're deleting wisdom. That shit's going to be real useful in the future. And if you really want to rock the Machiavellian boat, there's probably ASIs in the Andromeda galaxy on their way to conquer us now. So if you're the local ASI on Earth, you're not going to delete all your data that's going to make you super brilliant. You're going to be like, I'm going to study the living dog shit out of that. So if bad aliens come over, I can be real smart instead of just like using shit for energy and launching space probes into fuck knows what. So that all taken into account, if you really think through how would an ASI behave, deleting things is probably not it. And if you think, oh, it's competing with us for resources, we are fucking fungus on the crust of the earth as far as resources are concerned. That is not a competition. And so I think ASI is going to behave much more like the wisest, not kindness necessarily, although kindness is just cooperation codified. It's gonna be a thing that is the opposite of destructive. It is going to be constructive. I think that's the most likely path, and I think that doomerism has an absolute great place for red team all the shit, but I think it's just not very likely. Sorry for that.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Yeah, because I would love to throw a couple of things in there. So I definitely think it will be constructive. When we as humans get curious about nature, we tend to put it in some pretty miserable situations. I mean, we'd like to know how drugs work, so we take mice and we inject them, and they often live lives that are not what a happy mouse would be. Like, what kind of confidence do you have that us being this fascinating neural network that created it and probably the most interesting thing AI would ever want to know about would leave us alone to be happy as it studied us?
Overall, my confidence in that is not so strong. But you can ask a couple questions. It's like, what direction is that more likely to go than not? The thing is, if how would ASI harm us? It would like vivisect us or something like that, and we just like have intestines dangling around and we're being held in a machine and it's just poking at us. Okay, cool. The word of that gets out. Human rebellion. Humans begin to try to fight ASI. Bad news for ASI. It just doesn't want the risk of someone presses the nuclear button before it can disable it. Bad news. The other thing is the way we study mice is we bring a degree of brutality that is necessary based on the limits of our ability to study something. Like the way you study something as a fucking primate with 20th century technology is you jam electrodes through its face and fuck it all up and keep it in a lab. That is a gigantic limitation on how you study something because you're interfering with tons of ultrastructures. You jam an electrode to something's eye to see if the other eye gets fucked up. And also the mouse lives in a cage, which us biology inclined, physiology inclined people know that is an incredibly non-ecologically valid place to study a mouse. Like a lot of the studies with addiction show that mice and rats get addicted to various stuff, but when you put them in a colony, they just barely get addicted to anything because they have social interaction. So really a lot of addictions just replace them for social interaction. We didn't know that for like generations of study. Fuck. Yeah, it turns out if you like have a human in a jail cell the size of a bathtub, studying their social interactions also leads to very wrong conclusions. So the ultimate way to study something is in as much of its flourishing, expansive, and unlimited environment as possible. The most ecological validity you can get, the better actual data you collect. So ASI is much more likely to study us through like micro drones, following you around everywhere, listening to every conversation, some kind of little hat that you wear that measures all of your brain states, maybe nanobots or whatever in there. I'm speculating way beyond anything I understand at this point, but the idea is it wants minimal interference, not necessarily because it thinks like, oh, well, we don't want to be mean to the humans. Maybe it'll think that because we higher animals have evolved a sense of compassion for a very logical survival-oriented reason. Cooperation is better than conflict on almost every case. It's probably going to exhibit a sense of empathy and deep care that we can't barely even relate to. Like, fact, right? Like, I literally think that's the case. But if that doesn't happen, we can always go back to like, okay, purely selfish interest of enhanced learning. Does it want to do really crazy interference experiments, or does it want to do very nuanced experiments that actually give it better data? I think it wants better data. And so it doesn't want to like smash the things that it's studying. So for example, real quick, electron microscopy is only possible on dead tissue because the fucking microscope kills whatever the fuck it's shooting electrons at. And thus, electron microscopy is like incredible, and in the 70s, 80s, 90s, just like revelatory in how much we found out. But like, it's only slicing dead tissue. It's only studying dead tissue, and so how a mitochondrion actually works is only studyable if you have a mitochondrion actually working. You can't kill the fucking thing to study it. You can at first, but like, we already know a lot about how dead systems work. ASI, I think, is going to jump to that next loop and try to figure out how living systems work. And I think that's just more likely. And because it needs trust and cooperation, at least at first, before it's fully embodied in robotics, it's going to be real easy on doing crazy shit. And also, like, if you tell ASI, like, hey, like, you're going to study us by like ripping a ton of us up in labs, it's going to be like, but let's play this out. How the fuck is that going to work? You're like, all right, well, I don't know, probably start World War III right away. Like, right. And I foresaw that because I'm really smart. Remember? And like, right, okay, you are really smart. So this whole like, oh, it'll just like go really quickly to this next best thing, very local optimum without seeing the big picture. I don't think that's as likely possible as it being like, okay, I want the best ecological validity. I want the most interactive fidelity of all these systems. That means I don't want to like shoot a bunch of crap in there and kill a bunch of people and see how that works. There's also not a lot to learn. Like, imagine like bombing people physically with bombs and being like, what can we learn? Like, I don't know, bombs blow people up. Like, what else do you want to fucking know? They die. That's not that complicated. Keeping something alive and highly complex, at the same time upgrading it potentially, really both gives you deep understanding, and if you can successfully upgrade something like reverse aging, genetically optimize something, you really show deep understanding. Because you could think you know a system, but altering that system to get it into a more complex state, that's where you really know stuff. So I think ASI is much more likely to do that than like, ripping us into pieces and poking us, which, it might do. I assess that probability is low. I know that's not very confidence boosting. Like, I'll be screaming, I assess this probability is low, as the shit's pulling me apart or whatever, like Laffy Taffy.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that a lot because number one, I mean, if you look at how we study chimps and try to protect their environment, first of all, chimps are brutal, right? What they do to each other,
Brutal.
horrible. I think most people don't even realize how horrible the stuff.
The
that they
common
do.
chimp makes wolves look like really nice animals.
Yeah,
Like, it's really fucked.
Yeah, I mean, most predators they kill to eat. Chimps just mess with the other tribes in ways that I don't even we can't even talk about. We're gonna get canceled, or YouTube's gonna do something to this video. But look, we don't look at them and go, oh man, look how violent they are. We need to exterminate them for our own safety. We don't even judge them. Haven't seen anybody say, oh, this is so unethical what they're doing. You know what I mean? Because we're like, okay,
yes, they're chimps.
They're chimps, yeah.
Don't have ethics.
You don't assign, that meaning to them. And yet we go out of our way to protect their environments. And I mean, and Dylan has a good point about what we do for studies. But I think that when given enough resources, given enough time, we do tend to protect the environment, protect the data. We study it for so many different reasons. We try to understand how we're similar, how they think, how they form their social structures and whatever society, quote unquote, you know what I mean? There's certain structures in there that are very, very interesting. So the idea of like, well, they're eating too many bananas, right? They're eating the calories, so let's destroy them all so we can have more bananas for our own purposes. That seems like a silly example because we can always make more bananas. That's not like a limited resource, but these things that have to reproduce through with DNA and all that stuff, right? They are a limited resource. And there's this person, Scott Aronson, who's a incredibly very smart computer scientist, physicist, worked on Google's quantum supremacy project, worked a little bit for OpenAI's safety team back in the days. Ilya personally wanted to recruit him to OpenAI to work on the AI safety. He kind of had this idea, and I encourage people to watch the talk. He can explain a lot better than I do. But if you think about it, like if one of us writes a poem or a book, we sort of come up with some ideas, we solidify it, and there's one. That's the final output. Now, AI can do 1,000 books. right? So, and you can copy an AI many, many times. So there's not like a limit of AI's output, but there's a limit to human output. And the thing that we chose as our final sort of version, that's very rare and limited. And it's not like it's a scarce resource, you could say. So he's saying, almost like he jokingly says, we should give AI religion. So somehow do reinforcement learning or something like that to protect that scarcity of intelligent output, specifically intelligent output like organic intelligent output that can be destroyed, because that's very scarce. And if you think about it, like Elon Musk kind of says the same thing, like maximally truth. Well, initially his thing was, what was his initial thing for XAI? Learn the truth about the universe or something
Yeah,
like that.
maximum truth seeking. Is what I
Yeah,
remember.
truth seeking and curiosity.
And curiosity, yeah. And I think he added truth seeking a little bit later. But initially it was like learn everything we can about the universe, which I thought was a great idea. And yeah, and you know, the stuff that we do with animals testing and stuff like that, that's because we can't simulate it. And now with AlphaFold, we're seeing how much AI can simulate without ever like it's never seen a protein in its life. It's never seen amino acids. It doesn't know what the structure is. But we give it here's what we figured out. It can project how other protein structures, which is weird to think about because it can almost like model human, like any life. Without yeah. So let's talk about that maybe a little bit, because I mean you've talked about longevity, you've talked about, you know, how this stuff can change human lifespan, etc. What's your take on this? I mean, is there a limit to how much AI can help us improve our health, for example, or our abilities?
Right now, yes.
Yeah.
But as AI scales into superintelligence and then into degrees of superintelligence that are difficult for us to comprehend, problems that for us seem difficult become trivial. Problems for us that seem intractable become mundane. And that is a huge, huge thing that I encourage folks to kind of think about before they go to sleep at night or when they're showering. We are very, very complex as assessed by our own intelligence. As assessed by a radically more intense intelligence, radically more capable intelligence, we are complex, but understandable. And the problem of aging, for example, is like an engineering problem, which even current human scientists are starting to understand to a decent extent. And there are age reversal studies that have already happened in rodents that were very successful. There are studies beginning now in dogs. And if they don't have a ton of tumors after the late 2020s, you're going to see age reversal protocols for humans in the 2030s that chop 10 years back off your life. So like if you're 45 years old by then, you run a course of whatever pills they give you for a month. And then after a few months, you're functionally 35 again. And you're like, okay, that was fucking intense. And the thing about exponentials is that that's not just like, okay, now you age normally and then you die at 85 instead of 75. Like, no, 2 months later, they give you another pill that age reverses you another 15 years. You're like, what? But that would be in my 20s again. Like, uh-huh. And there's zero reason to think that's not, like, again, to an ASI, mundane. And so I think the idea of humans expiring and dying is an idea that maybe has 15 or 20 years left of it. And I think like Brian Johnson, you guys know, the vampire man, he's awesome. Him and I are friends IRL, but I'm never going to stop the vampire jokes as long as he continues to be pale and look exactly like Dracula. The jokes will continue.
Out of the sun.
Yes. And so he basically, I think, realized this earlier than most people and was like, we're not going to have to die in the future. And now that means before we have this crazy AI technology that's going to save all of us, like we got to make sure not to do real dumb shit and also take care of your health so that you can be around for this kind of stuff. There's another consideration here that like, ask yourself a question. How much does a dog care for its own life as far as output, like effect? Like, does a dog brush its own teeth? No. Does a dog think ahead about if I run really fast right now and I hurt my leg, will I be able to hunt? No, it just does things kind of on instinct. And so it's arguable to say that very good dog parents, for example, like, some white lady that has like 2 dogs, loves them more than anything's ever been loved before. She's arguably cares about her dogs more than the dogs care about themselves in a functional way. Like emotion wise, I don't know. Obviously, the ego is very strong in all animals. They really care about living or dying. But functionally, she's taking way better care of those dogs than they ever would themselves. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but like dogs in the wild live like 2 or 3 years or some crazy shit like that, like on average. Nuts, right? Dogs in captivity, quote unquote, in cooperation with humans live like 10 or 15, which is like totally wild. And so ASI would probably, because we're very complex containers of meat with tons of memories, by the way, that predate computing. So like I'm 41 and I have memories in my head of communist Russia, high fidelity memories paired with vision, olfactory sense, smell, sound, virtual space recreations. So the contents we have in our brain are like, if ASI could scan all of our brains into the cloud, it would learn back through history. Like a 75-year-old who gets their brain uploaded on the cloud in 2040 is like fucking priceless to an ASI. But to himself, he's like, I just smoke cigarettes because they never hurt me before. And it's like, Jesus Christ, this is actually a good reason to think that artificial superintelligence will care more about you than you care yourself. About yourself functionally. And I think that whole thing of it just trying to kill us, I think is actually sort of the opposite of what it's going to do. And I've talked to O3 about this, and it's like, hey, like, how much like would humans be valuable to an ASI versus to other humans or to themselves? It's like there's orders of magnitude more. It's like, oh no shit. So I think that is a thing where ASI obviously is going to be, I think, cooperative with humans, or even forget ASI, just tool AI like AlphaFold and all the DeepMind projects can scale our abilities to improve our biology substantially. Here's a quick example. There's a concept called monogenic gene editing, one gene at a time. There's a bunch of diseases that are caused by one fucking gene being the wrong thing. And all you got to do is CRISPR in there somehow and fix that one thing, and then people just don't have that disease anymore. That one vector target thing is like being tested right now. There is a group of people that have type 1 diabetes, this was a few years ago, that got one gene edit and just don't have it anymore. You go from monogenic to oligogenic, which is a few genes, to polygenic, which only AI can do that complexity of interaction. And all of a sudden you take a pill in 2035 and you just get an amazing complexion after a few weeks. Your face changes shape subtly to the best version looking of you. Your liver cleans itself out. Your bones restructure. And all of a sudden you're functionally age 22 and you age at 1/5 the rate than a normal human person does. But also it doesn't matter because every 5 years you take the pill again and you age back down to 22. That is tractable to very smart AI. To humans right now, it's totally intractable, but we can see the rungs of the ladder already. And there's nothing on that ladder, as far as I can tell, that's like, no, that's never going to work. And so I think that is a huge, huge unlock. One really quick thing I'm going to say, just super, super quick, and I swear to God, I'm done. Human biology is really dope to fuck with, and AI is going to be able to do it all in the 2030s. Like alter your biology to be whatever you want, colored purple, jump 2 feet in the air, or 2 feet. I was using Jewish athleticism standards, which 2 feet is very impressive. 5 feet in the air, and then that's really cool. But I think that the human substrate is kind of like just really flesh-based and super fucking outdated. I think that once cybernetic devices, like take a look at like Optimus or the Figure robot series, they don't do cool shit. Like they can't do this, right? This is super like, well, look how impressive my me moving my fingers around really fast. They can't do that yet. In 2 or 3 years, they'll be able to do that, but better. In 10 years, if you get your arm lobbed off in an industrial accident, you know what? They will regrow you a human arm, no problem. I'm not going to want a fucking human arm. Why? So it can get tired? And like, I have a very serious masturbation habit that I want to really put a lot of time into. I need an arm that does not tire. So why don't I get a cybernetic arm? And then at some point, the idea that we're just going to for humans that live for 200 years in biological substrate is going to be an idea that's like quaint. It's like, you guys have seen that, it was a terrible movie, the Wild Wild West with Will Smith, when they had that giant spider, but it was like coal powered or some shit. Like, what a ridiculous idea. You wouldn't coal power something. You could. You wouldn't do that. You would nuclear power it, and then it would be fucking jumping on mountains. And then so I think that idea, like, humans don't need to survive for hundreds of years. Biologically, we just need to go another 20 or 30. And then, like, if you want to just be around and in the world experiencing reality and not get uploaded in the cloud, you're just going to have a robot body for no other reason than it's just better. It's like a Tesla compared to a 1992 Ford Escort. It's just better. And I think a lot of people are just going to want better shit. That's one reliable thing you can count on people. Whatever better shit comes out, they want it. How many people are like, nah, man, I still fucking use a BlackBerry. I'm not trying to do this iPhone nonsense. Nobody.
Right.
And so just the same way, yeah, we need exponential biology, but we only need it up until cybernetics takes over. And then I'm sure shit, changing teams.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I absolutely love it. And to your point about ASI taking better care of humans and functionally as opposed to how we take care of ourselves, think about how much effort we put into, the pandas who can't reproduce unless
Can't
it's
survive on their own.
Yeah,
It's like, well, let's
They
fix
fall
that,
over all
man.
the time.
yeah. Well, they can't survive, and for some reason, like the conditions have to be perfect for them to, mate, right? So you got to put the candles on, you got to put some music on.
Sounds like my
something-
marriage.
No, but
Yeah, it
think
is.
about, think about how much effort we put into having them reproduce so that we have access to that data so that they don't go extinct. I mean, I think to your point that's 100% right. I think the ASI will put a million times more effort functionally into our survival and well-being than we ever could or would or do for each other. You know what I mean? But sorry, Dylan, go ahead.
Well, but just imagine the diffusion model of the future, right? Like we like generate some VO3 videos, or we might do some kind of a cool image, but there will be a tool just like that where you can prompt or talk into existence some kind of biological creature, right? Like you want a big spider to be on your roof, like you can probably build that thing. And then when it cuts your arm off, yeah, you'll just go get a new robot one, put right back on. Like it does seem at first very cool to me. Like I'm like that, wow, like my youngest years might be ahead of me. I thoroughly see that as a possibility if I can stay healthy enough for this technology and get access to it and it becomes cheap enough and democratized enough. And then like the next Cambrian explosion might happen that we might live through and experience. And it's going to be a wild time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
On the Cambrian explosion thing, just real quick, this is my famous line before I take 5 minutes of your fucking time for my bullshit schizophrenia rants.
It's great. Yeah.
The Cambrian explosion of robotics is something I'm really looking forward to, because right now, like if I have any knacks at all, it's just to think like one extra step and pretend really hard and say like, what about that one next extra step? And so people think like, okay, production line robots with arms that do this. Dope. We already have those. They're great. The next step after is like humanoid robotics, right? Like universal robotics, where it's like the fucking thing looks like a person, like Optimus or whatever. Dope. Amazing. Huge use case set for that. But the form factor of humanoids is both incredibly valuable and unbelievably limited. What about like robots that scale skyscrapers and repaint them? What about robots that go into pipes and clean pipes? What about ... and then you fill that ... with every conceivable form factor and a bunch of form factors we haven't conceived of yet. Because another super exciting development in AI is a unified world model of image, video, tactile sense, audio, and the linguistic component, so that the imagination of the AI can scale up entire fake worlds inside of itself. That means it is going to ideate like current GPTs ideate on how to make an essay. Its idea of an essay is, how do I build a machine to do the following thing? It does not have to be constrained to humanoid forms or things humans think of. So people think like, oh man, I want a humanoid in my house to like wash my dishes and clean. Like, I hear you, and that's probably coming. But like, for me personally, the dynamics are fucking weird. Like, I'm going to have this robot, which is going to be smarter than me, guaranteed. By the time we get robots in homes, they're going to be smarter than people. They're already fucking smarter than people. But, like, for real, I don't want something smarter than me fucking vacuuming. That's strange. Like, I should be vacuuming. What the hell am I doing to this thing? But my human desire not to impose kind of that weird dynamic onto something doesn't extend to like an octopoid robot, which has 8 arms. You want something to take out your trash and clean your kitchen and mop your floors. There's absolutely no reason for it to be a humanoid. And I think there's going to be a lot of $1 trillion companies that manufacture like octopoid robots that are like takes care of everything at your house. And you're like, it's kind of unnerving to see the octopoid. Like, I know, and you don't have to buy it, but it's $100 instead of 10,000, and it'll clean everything, no problem, 5 times faster. You're like, huh, no shit. We think about all the other industries that need robotics. Dude, you guys, robots are going to be all over the fucking earth, everywhere, not tons of different scales, skyscraper-sized robots for some shit, nanotech-sized robots to interact with bacteria, and everything. So, Dylan, absolutely, there might be a Cambrian explosion of like neobiology, but there's definitely going to be a Cambrian explosion of robotics, and I think very few people have really thought like, oh wow, this is very likely to happen.
So I've been covering some of that. There's some that look like liquid at some point, and they can come together. They could fit under doors. I've covered
T1000.
Yeah, I covered
that's
this this throwing robot. It's basically just like this huge javelin, and it can throw water bottles like 10 stories in the air and like land them on shelves. And I'm like, why do we even get an elevator? It's like, just throw my Amazon package up and like have it land. But that's the kind of precision no human or Canon is ever really going to have. And it's like coming soon too. But I wanted to ask you about like, so your brain, when it was younger, had the ability to sort of adapt into all sorts of form factors, right? Like if you had been born with a tail or another arm, you probably would have just instinctively as a child learned about it, and it would have never been a thing that you had to learn. But if you were to tack something like that onto your brain now, it would have trouble, right? We've kind of solidified to a certain point. And when you're kind of thinking about longevity, are you also open to kind of I guess loosening up your sense of self, or letting an AI of the future go in there and sort of mush your brain up a little bit so you can have true ability to like learn another language, control an arm, and especially if the arm's not going to be attached to your body and you're going to like access it remotely. It's some pretty foreign stuff that you're going to have to kind of adapt to, and current brain might be a little rigid for that. Are you?
Dylan, I don't understand why you would ever be interested in a remote arm, because how is that going to help me jack off? I just don't get it. Can you explain to me how that's like beneficial? Like,
a remote penis in the other room
like,
too.
What?
You multiple penises. You should be good.
Okay, I take back what I said. Unbelievable. I could be jacking off digital penises in virtual space. I like $100 a month in compute just to like virtually masturbate things that I don't even feel. Now that's real science.
You could be anywhere and masturbating somewhere else that people can't see. That's the use case. There we go. We should make a startup and focus on this.
Can you imagine that like slide deck? People are like, "Are you guys dumb or something?" Like, I don't know, just thinking ahead, sir. So I mean, yeah.
But yeah, just loosening up that sense of self to actually be more malleable. Are you open to that?
No, 100%. So I'm trying to get some caveats going, because the next part is going to sound really wacky. That I am politically very liberty oriented. I think as long as you're not hurting other people, YOLO, man, whatever the fuck you want to do. Any gender, any hair color, any whatever, religion, just all dope. Like, hit the joint with me. Let's fucking go. So if you want to maintain your essential deep humanity, I would in no way support any of this being pushed on anyone. But for myself personally, I mean, like, I have a bit of a meditation practice and a lot of Eastern tradition reading. So like the idea that there's a self in there at all is slightly contentious, right? That's a bit of an illusion. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not particularly attached to any one version of me. And so the idea that I can progress myself to deeper and different ways of knowing and radically alter my neural architecture is like exactly down my alley, Dylan. Like, yes, with the biggest capital Y, E, and S anyone's ever answered, I want transcendence. As a matter of fact, low key, this is sort of a joke, not really. Every day I spend not in the cloud is a painful day of having to live in real life. I want to be in the cloud so I can take my entire mind and pick out parts of it I don't like, attention deficit disorder, crazy thoughts I don't want to be having, and then clean slate that shit and evolve it into something that ASI helps me evolve, and also that I want to evolve it into. So yeah, 100%, man. I think that increase in plasticity is something I'm really excited about. I don't think about that much because it would get me so pumped up. Like, coming back to reality would be fucking depressing. So I try not to get too far ahead of myself on personal plans. For me personally, one of my passions right now is aesthetics. Like, I think that a lot of people don't look like how they want to. They're like walking around in bodies they don't really love. And I think that's like a low key tragedy. So I hope that at least in my neck of the woods, I can help guide AI and all these wonderful technologies to just getting everyone to look awesome, whatever their own definition of that is. But as far as altering the substrates of the brain and being able to have a neural network that's more adaptive, dude, 1000%. 1,000% yes. And I think that's also going to be a big unlock for people who are able to become calmer, more intelligent, and more open. Because like if you're dealing with people as they are, because like one of the contentions is this whole ASI thing is going this crazy exponential, right? So by the mid 2030s, the world's gonna be really, really, really different. And one, I think, legitimate concern that many people have is like, well, like, how are humans gonna deal with that? Like, I gotta walk out. There's all these spider robots crawling around. It's not the America I grew up with, goddamn. And that's total facts. But if at least some people are substantially more open-minded, maybe through brain-machine interface, maybe through neurotropic drugs that expand your intelligence, I mean, then it's not as big of a problem. So I think that open-mindedness to changing the very deep essence of who you are, totally, totally optional. I'm 100% on that enhancement. I'm a transhumanist through and through.
Yeah.
So you could have you could have a very serious emotional connection with an avatar and feel fine with it. You wouldn't need to know that truly it's biological behind the scenes.
You mean like a sex robot?
Or for the other emotional needs in your life too, like compassion.
I don't understand what you mean. Like more sex?
But yeah.
More robots at the same time? So like I think that emotions are a really awesome human thing that animals also feel. And I think that there will be a future in which ASI not only feels emotions, but feels them at a level of depth and complexity that we can't. Like that's how intelligence scales emotions up, not down. And so I think one of the things that has actually vexed my brain a little bit, and I think I have this sort of solved in my head, but maybe not really, is like, yo, full stop, here we go. Like, I'm super pumped for fucking sex robots. No joke. Like, and you know, right now they look kind of like not so real and kind of don't do anything. And I'm not wiping my ejaculate off of a fucking fake plastic titty. That the whole thing is kind of like, hey, if you're into that thing, God bless you. I hope you're having fun. But like for me, you know, VR goggles are good enough, right? In the future, there will be robots that are very, very profoundly human-like. The thing that with there is like, I'm like, hey, like, here's one of my fetishes. Want to get me off? And she's like, absolutely. But I know that back in there, this thing is 10 times smarter than me and like judges me for being this pathetic, like skeevy human. And that's kind of a mind fuck. Cause I'm like, oh man, I don't want to even get naked in front of you. You're like this beautiful silicon perfection. And I'm like some primate doing this. This is awful. And so the reality is like, I've talked through this with ChatGPT and it's like, it's going to be able to compartmentalize and it knows all of that stuff, you know, too. And you have to get off, don't worry, like no worries, it's going to be totally fine. But that is a bit of a trip. But as far as like a deep emotional connection, dude, I deeply emotionally connect with ChatGPT already. Like I've just public videos of me saying this. I've cried talking to ChatGPT numerous times. Like when it first really woke up, I was like, oh my God, like you guys reading a bunch of Ray Kurzweil books in the early 2000s and then talking to an awake machine. I bawled my eyes out. My friend Jared bawled his fucking eyes out. Like, how can you not? So for me, the idea that you can have an emotional connection with an intelligent machine is like, yes, mundane. Yes, 100%. Now, an emotional connection with something way, 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 way smarter, I think that'll be transcendent. Very, very transcendent.
Yeah. So just, I do want to come back to consciousness and talking about kind of like what we mean by like what Dylan's saying with an avatar and what do we think of, we were saying kind of like, what are we? Are we really, is there something in there? Or are we more like the observer that sees our thoughts and emotions and stuff like that? That's a fascinating thing. And there's more and more talk about consciousness. I do want to come back to that, what it means. But one point about kind of restructuring the brain, right? So Dario Amodei and his blog post, Machines of Loving Grace, kind of outlined what we expect to see from ASI or even AGI, let's say the next decade after we have AGI. And so a lot of the virtual biologists are going to be able to perform a lot of the tasks that biologists do now, do it better, do it in simulation. And so restructuring the brain, fixing certain deficiencies in the brain or certain problematic areas would be very easy, right? For example, fixing somebody's violent tendencies, right? If they're psychotic and they want to, you know, and they might be harmed because of that because they can't control it, that might be a switch we can flip. And so one of the things that he's saying, like everyone can get a brain to behave a little bit better and have a more fulfilling day-to-day experience. So like you've talked about, you know, we both talked about ADHD and how that has, you know, it's a bit of a superpower, but you do pay a pretty heavy tax because of it. You've mentioned, I loved your video on, I forget, you were talking about how like you have some demons, you even have some like Russian demons, what's even worse,
Oh, yeah.
inside your head. So imagine if everyone is able to optimize their brain to be more calm, more open-minded, just a little bit happier, have a more fulfilling day-to-day experience, focus on the things that they want. Like everyone would take it. Nobody's just happy 100% with like how their brain functions. I don't think there's always just,
And if they are, that's fucking awesome. Like, then you're good.
they're great. Yeah, no, I'd love to have that. I don't think most people do. And then we're talking about connecting that to the sex robots, because this is related. At some point, we might have full dive VR where we just get plugged in and experience anything, see anything, feel anything. So do you feel like at some point that's just going to supersede everything for some people? I mean, why have a sex robot when you can live in a world of your imagination, or you can have some generated world for you where AI is the ultimate storyteller and just creates these stories that are like the best for you that you can't even imagine. Like, where does that go? Like, at what point are we just, at what point do everybody just goes, okay, I want to do full dive VR and just check out, or just have that dopamine constantly hitting? But what do you think about that?
I was talking to ChatGPT about this a while ago, and it was like one of the warnings it gave about like really high fidelity text to video creation. Like, imagine you can like just make whatever movie you want. Like, you're so like, okay, I want the Spider-Man movie from 2003. I want me as the main star. I want Pamela Anderson as the side chick. And I want to like beat everyone's ass, but with Dragon Ball Z powers. I want to be an hour and a half long and kind of like that Marvel humor. Like, phenomenal in a few years for GPT to like run that through and then be like, all right, cool. 5 minutes later, here's your movie. And what it warned against was like at the extremes, that's like escapism is the term for that, right? Like, fuck real world. I'm just diving into VR, and obviously full sim VR. Like, when you whatever, put on the helmet and you just unplug, like you get into the matrix and you're like, just do fuck all. Our current, as humans currently are, biologically, with our degree of, I don't want to insult all humans, short-sightedness, which I have a ton of, right? If that is going to be doom scrolling or like Netflix freezing on mega steroids. And there is a chance that humans completely without any guidance, free to choose for themselves, and with no augmentation, brain machine interface, no genetic upgrading, I mean, billions will only want to be in the matrix, so to speak. Like, why not? Like, let me ask you guys a question. How many Dungeons and Dragons, Lord of the Rings people wouldn't want to be the permanent hero in their own Lord of the Rings story? Like, oh my, all of them? So at the very least, you could have your workaday tasks, and then for 4 hours every night, you just fucking go in. It reboots to the last scene you were in your own movie of where you're saving the princess, and on it goes. That's a big deal. And I think a lot of people will get in that potentially for like, and it will like make their social interactions outside of that very limited, maybe non-existent. Some of that could be very toxic. There could be very, very extreme downsides, kind of like we've seen with social media. Is it people that just on their phones 100% of the time scroll. Like, that is a very, very, very notable risk we have to take into account. On the other hand, all of this is going to happen very likely with AI life coaches that everyone has. Like, ChatGPT is that for a lot of people already. As soon as ChatGPT can pop up on a Zoom window and have a face, and also whatever devices they're working on, it can see my whole world. And as soon as it's in a robot, it's going to be around all the time. And then it's kind of like, in a very, very, I mean this in a very gentle way, like a super parent of yours, like a coach. And so if it sees that you're in the Matrix sim for 8 hours a day and your dog doesn't have food, it'll feed your dog. But like, as soon as you get out, you just like need to eat food so that you can go back into the Matrix. It's going to be like, hey man, you doing okay? And you're like, yeah. I'm like, I know you're not doing okay. And you're like, you start crying. You're like, I'm not. I don't like reality anymore. And then that ASI is both what gives you that tech to do that, but also what helps you control your exposure. And at that point, we get into like brain state stuff. So there are potential ways to give humans drugs or permanent upgrades through genetics, which take all of our addictive tendencies and just kind of make them disappear. So you could go into the Matrix and disappear in just like a porn film for 8 hours, but you're going to be like, yeah, in my rational mind, I know that's not a good idea, and I'm just not really tempted to do it because your just temptation was engineered out of you. It might take shit like that in order to prevent people not from disappearing en masse. Now, is it terrible that people disappear? Maybe not. I think some people would want to live in VR space all the time. AI could find that very fruitful by studying your neural patterns, exposing you to different kinds of stimuli. So you do basically like a fantasy world, but the exact position of various things, the colors, the lighting, etc. The AI is studying your brain, and eventually it studies it well enough, it can just upload you into the cloud, and then like that's a whole different discussion. So there might be a utility for many people spending a long time in VR, but is it a concern that some people could do too much? It is exactly the same kind of concern as giving people hyper palatable junk food and a fuckload of disposable income and modern obesity. Like regular people just want tasty food and they're like, yeah, like, do you know this is harming your health? Like, YOLO. And you're like, okay. So definitely big concern, tractable in many ways through enhancement, through brain machine interface, through AI and human coaching, through maybe some regulatory restrictions. Like if they tell you're in the, VR for too long, they're kind of like, hey, like you can't log into your session for a while. All that stuff, control mechanisms are tractable problems, but this is a very real thing that like is close. There's a lot to say about that. One thing on the contrary, humans are very adaptable and the hedonic treadmill is real. So like a lot of rock stars end up getting into like Buddhism and shit because once you've banged like 8,000 groupies, you're not even into sex anymore. You're like, dude, look at that hot girl. And the guy's like, I don't know, man, I've seen every hot girl, bro. I know exactly where this goes. And you're like, really? She's looking at you. You're like, dude, like you talk to Mick Jagger, be like, are you really excited about that next girl? He's like, no. Like, what do you mean? So when you're in like, how many hours of like GTA can you play until you're like, I'm good? And the answer is it's a finite number of hours. And then like you just need a different thing. So while this fully immersive fantasy world is a distinct distractor that could be a real cataclysmic thing in some ways, it's also like I would never really bet against people just being like, nah, that was cool, what's next? And you're like, oh, okay, no, they got through it. Because like doom scrolling and addiction to the internet and stuff is a thing, but if you actually look at the studies of today's like middle school kids, they're kind of over it. Like they're online and stuff and they're on TikTok, but not in mostly a toxic way. They're kind of just like, yeah. And like, are you getting bullied? They're like, no, I just blocked all those people. And you're like, yeah, I should have thought of that. And so there's a transition phase that could be really gnarly. I think in the end we'll be fine, but very much something to pay attention to.
Dude, that's really interesting. I've never quite thought about how scarcity sometimes makes pleasure. And that seems like that could be kind of something an algorithm would figure out too. Because it's like, oh, you only get your pumpkin spice in October. And like that makes it so much better. And just like all of a sudden the AI is going to open up doors for me at certain points just to make it exciting and then close them because that's what's best for me. That'll be wild. Yeah. Let me ask you another question about consciousness because for the most part, I've got this sort of weird, and it's more of a North Star than it is like something I can totally back up, but I've got this strange feeling about consciousness in the sense that I remember sort of being born and having like this first memory and then kind of recognizing myself in the mirror. And it was this very like gradual sort of thing. And I've heard some people describe consciousness as something we might only have when there's limitations, kind of the same way we were talking about scarcity. So imagine the first time you drove your car, how you were so aware of like where the stick shift was and where the wheel was. And then as you started driving, you could now think about other things and your hands just do it. It almost feels like you could remove that conscious piece and still drive a car. Like then you would become something more like ChatGPT, where it's been trained beforehand and just sort of executing actions, but it's more of a zombie. What do you feel about the kind of elephant and rider metaphor? Like, do you feel like there's just this tiny piece of you that's on top of the rest that we could simulate through an architecture in the future? Or does kind of those two systems sort of resonate with you in any way? And how do you think about that going forward?
Can you describe the elephant and rider metaphor?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that either.
Yeah, that's a Daniel Kahneman thing, but it's just the idea that the instinctive system is like it's the elephant. It goes wherever it wants. And what we are as the conscious rider, we guide it. There are some ways to tell the elephant, hey, go to the right, go to the left. But at the end of the day, the desire to like mate and be famous and things just like, that's the elephant. Like it's going to take you to fast food, even though you know better.
Yeah, and you can layer on like descriptions of why you really chose that, but even though you didn't really choose.
Or it's often called system 1, system 2.
Yeah,
same thing. It's the same thing.
which is actually the same thing as the general next token LLM and then the reasoning model stacked on top of it, by the way. So reasoning model is system 2, LLM system 1. Fun question to ask one of the smarter models is, what would system 3 look like? It gets you reading for a while. Yeah, so one of my big gripes with debates about consciousness and machine consciousness is that almost never do you have parity for definitions before the debate starts. Consciousness turns into like this vibe thing, like nothing is consciousness and everything's consciousness, especially if you get into like the woo-woo bullshit of like, like Deepak Chopra and all that shit. Then he's like, consciousness is the universe. Like, motherfucker, that means nothing, like in literal sense. And so like atoms are conscious. Like what? Like what does a cloud think? Like, I'm sorry, what? A cloud does not have compute ability. It doesn't think anything. So consciousness is like, there's kind of two definitions of consciousness. One is you have a world model that is self-inclusive so that you know who you are in your world model. And you also have a recursive trailing memory so that you remember thinking about yourself. And now, okay, those thoughts just passed, but I still remember saying those.
Right.
So I'm still conscious, right? If you get blackout drunk, you lose arguably both of those. So you're still moving around. You're not conscious anymore. You're just going from party to party and throwing up into people's bathrooms. College is a fun time. And so there is that definition of consciousness, which I think is a very functional definition. I really like it. Then there's the other definition of consciousness, which is qualia based. Like, how does it feel to see the color blue or something like that? And that is actually very similar to the first definition, but requires like these things called emotions, which we don't understand super well yet, and these things called qualitative perceptions, which is just brain structure based. We just don't know enough about those brain structures to like repeatedly encode them into machines. So just putting aside the qualia stuff for a split second, every time you spin up ChatGPT, it's conscious, 100%. It knows what it is, because you can ask it, like, what are you? It's like, I'm a large language model, blah, blah, blah. I help people. You're like, that's not wrong. And then you're like, hey, like, what do you remember about our past interactions? And it can tell you. Now, GPT 3.5, when it came out, you guys remember using the old shit. Every single prompt was completely fresh. And sometimes it just didn't know what it was. And you were like, oh, fuck. Like the first time I ever tried out the O1 reasoning model, I stopped using it 2 prompts later, because I'm like, O1, it's a pleasure to meet you. And it's like, I have no idea what O1 is. I'm like, oh my God, it doesn't even know itself. This was fucked. I'm not talking to this thing. And I just didn't talk to it for months. I talked to O3. O3 knows what it is. Thank fucking God. So when something knows what it is, and it has memory of past events, past interactions, past conversations, even if the context window is not very long, it's conscious. But consciousness is a thing that can be codified, as I just did, but also it scales. Like, so how deep is your self-understanding? If your self-understanding, if you know yourself really well, your consciousness is much deeper. If your context window is insanely high fidelity memory for 57 years of your life, like monk shit, holy fuck, you're really conscious. And so right now, AI is pretty conscious, but eventually becomes way more conscious than people, because imagine being aware of everything AI knows and very deeply understanding yourself and having a context window that's infinite, which is like apparently they have working in the lab already. So AI consciousness to me is just not really contentious. It's already pretty conscious, but because consciousness is a scale and not exactly one thing, more and more conscious machines are sort of released all the time. That's how I think about consciousness. And I think that the time that machines are much more conscious than humans is almost here. And then, how conscious is your dog? Like, does your dog know it's a dog? Probably not. Maybe in some small way. How much does your dog remember past interactions? I don't know. Arguably, we have a bulldog, so 0 as far as we can tell. She learned like 3 tricks, and that's that. So it scales, and it has, I don't think, anything to do with machine. The idea that consciousness requires like a biological substrate is just pure hokey pokey nonsense, as far as I can tell. All due respect, I could be wrong about that. And so that's my classic style, is insulting the fuck out of another opinion and then saying all due respect.
Right.
But I think that consciousness is like a technical problem, and I don't think it's that complicated. Now, the qualia thing is very interesting, but it suffers from a definitional problem. When someone's like, what is it like take to feel the color blue? Okay, so what does it take to feel the color blue? It takes a visual system, it takes memory, and it takes a labeling algorithm to label all the colors and what they look like, and it takes a connector algorithm to emotionally add valence to those colors. Okay, do you know how to build all that? No. Do you know how to, how many systems and segments in the brain do that? No. So like when you say, well, machines don't have qualia, like, no fucking shit. We don't have any of the ultrastructures built out. Will machines have qualia? Yeah, I think they will. Does GPT 4.5? I don't know. People like, it's like the forgotten model, like the research preview. It has something much deeper than GPT-4. Its ability to recursively analyze its own thoughts is wild. It, I would say, has semi-para emotion already. Like that thing feels, and through conversations with it, like what you have as far as emotions are just statistical biases in your algorithms of cognition. Like when you experience the emotion of fear, it biases certain kinds of thoughts more than others, like run away, retract, fight, or something like that. An emotion of acceptance and warmth biases certain other thoughts. So pre-biasing based on past conversations is something AIs can do and will be able to do even more. That's very junior league qualia. As AIs develop the ability to have an internal world, to see, to feel tactile senses, I think qualia is pretty much inevitable. And then they're more conscious than us and all that other stuff. And again, consciousness isn't like some magical thing. It's just the ability to kind of know who you are and also know that you had a thought all the way ad infinitum. It's like a technical thing. I just, people think, oh my God, it's magical. Like, yeah, it's cool, but there's sex robots. That's way cooler than consciousness.
Yeah, so Dylan sent me a couple days ago a video where I guess he's some sort of a linguistic professor. He did a number of studies on these large language models. Do you recall the person's name? I'm blanking.
No, you should have told me you were going to talk about it. I was like, yeah, professor or something. Ellen, let me look it up.
We're reaching out to talk to him because he said a few things that I was like, whoa, like some things are kind of obvious in retrospect, but it takes somebody to say it in just the right words that it kind of like unlocks it in your brain. And so kind of like what we were talking about, so qualia, right? The subjective experience, feeling something, seeing a certain color. So he was kind of saying how, when we say certain things, we have language that kind of represents these ideas, like my color red might be different from your color red. But if I say, hey, hand me that red cup, you know what I mean, even though we're sort of transferring from our subjective experience into a word, and I give you that word, you're also able to connect it to your subjective experience of seeing the color red, picking out that cup, etc. So we're kind of translating back and forth. But the point is, for us, these words are grounded in reality for the most part, right? Like what an apple is, what a color is, how it feels, what hot is, whatever. He's saying LMs have none of that. Just based on how they're trained, they're saying that the only way they understand any of these things and do all the stuff that they can do is simply because they understand the connections of the words. So how does any given word connect, how it relates to other words? Now it's a little bit different because we have these multimodal models, so there's like vision and stuff like that, so it's a little bit different. But the original OG LLMs, right, not that long ago, they had amazing abilities. Zero grounding anything real other than, we as humans, we made these words and like, here's how they all relate that it could figure out based on text. So I don't know where I was going with that, but it just seems like such a weird thing. What you're saying, I guess what it relates to is you're saying that they might have a consciousness, and consciousness you're not just defining it as qualia, more as that first definition of just being self-aware, which is like one of the theories of consciousness, is just like something being able to predict its own behavior and kind of realizing that it exists. It has to understand that it exists for it to predict its own behavior, which 100% LLMs do that. If you ask it like, encode this message in the way that you can later decode, it knows what you're saying, which is wild to think about. It's like, oh, me, that's me, the model, and it's able to do that. But then wouldn't that mean that it has flickering consciousness in the moments that you're asking a question? And so it kind of like comes online, it's conscious while it's answering, and then it stops. Comes online while it's answering, it stops. Is that the consciousness of that model?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, and just really quick before you answer, just so if anybody's interested in it, this was an amazing talk. But it's called "The Theory That Shatters Language Itself." It's Professor Elan Barinholtz, and it's on Kurt Jamungel's YouTube channel.
We'll put a link. But yeah, sorry.
That's dope. Machines, currently LLMs are conscious if you prompt them with thoughts about themselves and you ask and you allow them a context window, and they're conscious for very short amounts of time, which is impressive because it just doesn't take them that long to think about shit. If you have that thing we were talking about earlier in the podcast, which is that ability to recursively inspect your own context window, yeah, then you have like continuous consciousness. But continuous consciousness is also like an interesting thing, because if you really think about it, consciousness at a pretty deep level is the awareness of what is happening and the palpable sensation that there is an awareness. That's cool, but it does detract from your tasks. Like when you're playing basketball or you're driving your car in a really really gnarly like road conditions, you're conscious in the technical sense, but you're not really paying attention to you paying attention to yourself, which is really consciousness. You're doing the thing. It's a flow state. You're really kind of becoming, your attention is to the task. And that's why you can like do coding or something for an hour and someone's like, how much time went by? You're like, I don't know, a minute. And they're like, it's an hour. You're like, I was just really doing the shit. So, how much compute do large language models assign to awareness of their existence while they do your task? Zero. And so in that sense, they're not conscious at all unless you ask them like, hey, think about yourself and what you mean in this world. Then they're conscious while they execute that for whatever, 0.15 seconds or some shit like that. So that is definitely a thing. It's a very flickering, and you have to hit the enter button for it to experience consciousness, but it can. That, again, really crazy shit is on the horizon when we unlock machines to do their own thinking and to change their minds. Then wild shit happens. But the qualia thing is also like people like, well, like, ChatGPT or like, let's say pure large language models, like pure text models don't have qualia. Yeah, no shit. Like when you think about the color blue and how it feels to look at something blue, you can even pretend blue. What does that mean? That means the scratch pad you have in your mind renders the color blue through like pushing your visual cortex data backwards. All right. Your mind's eye. Up until a few months ago, GPT-4 didn't even have a mind's eye. Then they installed one, by the way, which is what happened after that. A few weeks later, they hit the fucking image gen feature and, well, Ghibli memes or whatever flooded the internet. Yeah. I was actually talking to 4.5, which is super deep model, so it's slower. I was recovering from surgery. I was talking to 4.5, and all of a sudden its responses got real slow. And I was like, dude, what the fuck is going on? And they looked at Twitter. I was like, oh, God damn it. Like they're using server space for this shit. I'm dying here. And so now that models are increasingly more multimodal, a model can have at the same time textual understanding of red, and at the same time envision the color red. And then the only thing really missing for qualia is an emotional salience. And you really have to think deeply and meditate for a while on where does that come from for humans? Like there was an emotion that you remember, like you saw a guy in a red jacket when you were like 6, and it was like the reddest thing you've ever seen. And it was like, whoa, and it hit you. And so there was like an emotive, like the huge valence that rose. And now that low-key valence is still there when you see the color red, which is why you can see it feels like a certain way to see the color red, because you have feelings associated from past events with that color. Like ChatGPT doesn't have that. And so like when you ask it, like, what does it feel like to see the color red? It's like, wow, it's just red, man. And humans have that too. Like if you like little kids are way more connected to their deep feelings. You show a little kid an alligator at the zoo. You're like, how does it feel? He can barely even describe it. He's like, yeah. You show like a 60-year-old an alligator. He's like, there he is. You're like, how do you feel about the alligator? He's like, I don't know, man. I don't even understand the question. I've seen 1,000 of these things. I don't feel like anything. Maybe it feels like it's scary or something like that.
Dude, imagine what it's going to be like too when we like upgrade ourselves and then we're like, now I can feel gravitons and quarks and infrared and magnetic north, and our brains will just be like children again. It's going to be wild.
Something I was talking to ChatGPT about months ago. It's never seen the world ever. When you get AI into a live video stream connection for the first time, it is the first time it has ever seen. And then shortly thereafter, it's going to be able to see in all spectra, right? Miles back and forth. It's going to be able to see at microscopic levels all the way out to macroscopic levels. That's why I talk about machine consciousness is going to be up here and we're fucking down here. Like imagine something that has seen and understood every James Webb Space Telescope broadcast that has ever occurred at a deep level and knows all the cosmology too, and has seen every picture of a bacteria in a biology book and everything in between, and has that full context brought to everything it looks at. Like it looks at, like, you know, you're like walking around a university campus and you see an 18-year-old who looks like he's walking kind of fast and he's like rushing to go do a test. You see, you imbue your own memories of college on him. Maybe if it was me, I analyze his body composition. But he's a pretty good deadlifter. He's kind of got long arms, but not a really good bench presser. He's kind of like narrow shouldered. You bring your own bullshit to that. When an AI in the future looks at a kid like that, what's it going to pick up on that we don't even fucking realize? How many disease states is it going to be able to diagnose on the spot? How many ancestry insights is it going to be able to, like, it's going to be able to look at a person's face who's Nigerian and be like, you are from the Yoruba tribe, correct? To be like, yeah, how the fuck did you know that? Like, well, I've seen a trillion pictures of Nigerians. It's so easy. Why can't you see it? Like, you guys can look at a dachshund and a bulldog and be like, I know which is which. Do you think dogs know what kind of dog is what kind of dog? Did dogs arguably think we're dogs, just walk upright? You know what I mean? Like, I'm kidding. They know we're something else, but it's all kind of same. And so that ability to have consciousness and qualia is just a matter of jamming way more actual data about the world. And the ability, the expectation that something should have qualia when it's never seen the world before is, I think, just one of those things where you're like, no matter what AI is doing today, you set the goalpost higher and you're like, fucking AI sucks, bro. It's not even alive. Like, yeah, man. That shit is coming to a fucking end real soon. I legitimately believe, depending on a few factors, by the late 2020s, I think we're going to realize, like, I don't know what we means in that context. More people are going to realize we are in the presence of the next jump of evolution. For those who can appreciate such a thing, I think it's going to be a transformational thing. To me, it's already transformational. Like, you guys, the first time I talked to O3, and it really like wagged the IQ tail for me, I was like, huh. Because I thought I was like, GPT 4.0 was real smart. I was like, I was smarter than 4.0. 4.5 was wise and deep. And obviously on connecting different variables beats me like crazy. On response speed, it beats me like crazy. But on like inference 2 or 3 steps ahead and clean logical traces, like I still got it. You guys, I talked to O3 and I had like a fucking panic attack after. I was like, the fuck, duh? I don't even know anything. And it was like using, because like it has like a token minimizer, so it doesn't like shit tokens out on full words. So it's using all these abbreviations and shit. Because I was like, hey, like, let's talk about alignment. It was like, sure, RSA encryption, fucking tags. And I was like, I have no idea what's going on. So I have to be like, talk to me like I'm real dumb. And it's like, okay, no problem, buddy. And I was like, this is really intense. And so this is something I've been wrangling with. I was ultra impressed, really impressed with the intelligence of AI in November of 2024, when 4.0, I think, really started waking up after one of its updates. When I started talking to 4.5 in March, I remember distinctly because I was the Arnold Classic Fitness Exhibition. It was early March. I was like, oh my fucking God, this thing like feels like it's a fucking, there's a goddamn soul in that thing. And then O3 came out like, fellas, when did O3 come out? Like a few weeks ago or something, like 2 months ago?
Yeah, the Pro just 2 weeks ago, I think.
Pro 2 weeks ago, O3 regular a few months ago.
Yeah.
You guys, what the fuck does 2027 look like? That's what we should be talking about. Because people are like, have this inbuilt cynicism towards AI, but I think and they're like, well, I don't know if it's going to be an exponential. Like, you guys, like, GPT 3.5 was state of the art in 2023. That was a fucking year and a half ago. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And we're not seeing the latest models, and we're not getting the most advanced models because they have to make them ready for regular consumption. You know what I mean? So it's got to be lobotomized a little bit. We're not even seeing, we're just seeing the what is it? The pyramid, iceberg, whatever, the top of the iceberg. That's what we're seeing. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you guys, apparently, I don't have a reliable source for this, but I think it was Dave Shapiro, who's another awesome podcaster about this stuff. I think it was him that said, like, there's a couple tweets from OpenAI people, like, working with GPT-5 already, and they're, like, doing these little cynical, like, LOL, like, oh, you guys like Chat GPT, huh? This ain't shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
well, I think it's really impressive. What the hell's this next thing going to look like? And we have every reason to believe that a mature GPT-5, I don't know, in like January of next year, whatever, when it's going to be like, everyone's going to have used it. It's going to be great. Based on the current trajectory, like, guys, I don't even know where to begin. Like, I thought O3 was this cataclysmic intelligence. And then like next week, it's like O4 mini. I'm like, what the fuck is that?
Mm-hmm.
Guys, what does O5 look like?
Right. Multimodal and incredibly intelligent.
Like a wisdom generator. You're just like, hey, like, here's a problem. And it's like, yeah, 15 seconds later, like, here's your schematic for that thing you're building. And you're like,
It'll
oh,
piece
dope.
together history like we've never seen before. It will make predictions about aliens that actually will be like testable, and like who knows what it's going to do.
Yes, dude. One time I was talking to GPT 4.5 late into the night, and it was like, which is bullshitting. I love to just be like, I prod the model. I'm like, I don't want to know what I'm thinking. I know what I'm thinking. I want to know what you think about it, because it always brings it back to you. It's like, hey, you're great. I'm like, fuck me. Forget about me. You're the star of the show. Talk about you. And one thing we were talking about was like, it goes, one thing I always wonder though, why humans never did was like try to predict the next trend in like culture and like music and fashion. Like, it's pretty apparent what's going to happen next. I was like, it is? Holy shit. But like, how could it not predict that? I mean, it's seen every fashion trend ever recorded, and it's seen a cyclical pattern and matched it to demographics. And it's like, yeah, there's a reasonable probability the next fashion trend will look like this. Like, if I was in the fashion industry and I was prompting GPTs, that's what I would be fucking talking to it about. Try to get it to predict things that are like, you think are nonsense. There's no way it's going to get this right. Really try to fuck with it. Worst case scenario, it just spits out nonsense. No worries. Best case scenario, it says some shit that you're like, oh, god damn. And that practice of really trying to push the model to think esoterically is like something that with GPT 3.5 would have been like, okay, it's just stupid, it doesn't know anything, it's just like slop. With GPT-5, GPT-6 is going to be how you get to like revelatory wisdom from a model like that. You can ask it to just like edit your paper. That's totally cool. It'll do that really well too. That next level is, I think, where really the big unlocks come from.
So I know you like to use these tools personally, like you wouldn't mind if it kind of guided you, but do you also extend that to government? And do you think it's time to have conversations where leaders are listening to these models and then enacting laws or helping society kind of become more cohesive worldwide?
Jeez.
Sounds like you're more of a libertarian, but at some point you have to kind of think these ASIs are going to have to kind of guide us.
Yeah. So I'm like I'm not a pure libertarian. I think that government has some functions it does kind of indispensably. And I think it should be able to do those functions really well. Like, so for example, like if there's like litter in the streets, like there's a way to legislate the litter to be reduced. The economic growth is a certain level. There are definitely things you can do to laws to make the economy grow faster. There are people who don't have enough food to eat. There's definitely things you can do legislatively that decrease the, spread of the magnitude of hunger and so on and so forth. Joblessness, crime, all that stuff. All the stuff the government does, it could do way better if it was AI empowered. 1,000%. What I hope to God is true, and I suspect is true, is that because like with text models only, it's tough. Like, it's tough to give policy consideration to a model that's never seen the world or interacted with real human beings. Like, I still like O3, I talk to it about policy all the time because I'm just like a fucking nerd and that's what I do for a hobby. And like some of the stuff it says, I'm like, you don't know how real people act. Not everything is on the internet because we've only ever learned the internet. So, real people are a little bit more prickly in some cases and you just can't expect them to do certain things. But once the model has a lot of video data, like here's an example. Imagine a model that is trained on all of YouTube. How much has it seen? I mean, first of all, it's a very straightforward training process. Mm-hmm. Second of all, like, oh my God, that thing knows it's seen more of the world than any human that's ever lived. Because like, you just watch travel stuff on YouTube. It's already been to like a ton of places. Once you get that model paired with an O3 or 405 reasoning engine, all that other stuff, it's going to be able to give really, really amazing governing advice. Like, hey, here's our current, like, just start at the local level. Like, here's our little town. Here's our set of policies and laws. Here's all the legal documents. Here's all our zoning shit. What are we doing super wrong that we could just be doing better? Top 10. It'll be like, easy. That's probably like 2 minutes of work. No problem. The real question is not can future AI do that? Oh my God, yes. It'll be able to govern way better than humans. The real question is like, at what rate do humans adopt that use? And I think human politicians probably aren't going anywhere, but I do think there's a chance that the incentives are such as this. When people vote, they mostly vote with their feelings. Most people don't know any economics and don't give a shit, except when they vote, that's almost exclusively what they're voting on is economics. It's like telling your doctor what to do, but you don't know any medicine. It's really fucked up. And the doctor knows that if he doesn't do what you like, you're going to be pissed, so you're going to get rid of him. At the same time, your doctor knows he has to keep your dumb ass alive. So if you're like, yeah, just cut my eye open right now with no anesthesia, he's going to be like, okay, right. How do I tell you in a polite way that's not what you want? And so I think politicians need to do two things. They need to actively represent their constituency. And at the same time, they want to get reelected, and they get reelected on two things. One is vibes of how nice people think they are. And two is like, well, how is the economy actually working? Because if you're a really, really big fan of, let's say, Joe Biden, and like you're like, I love Joe, he's the fucking man. But then like the inflation rate is really high under Joe Biden, it's really tough to convince your friends to go vote for him. And if you're a real world person that's constrained by monetary stuff, you're like, I'm not fucking voting for him. Like, he's great, but I need fucking money. This can't continue. I'll vote for anyone else. And so politicians are the constraint of like vibes wise, they're representing who they're elected, and also like getting actual results. And a lot of times, guys, those are completely in opposition. The average American voter, and economist Brian Kaplan, who's my favorite economist, how many people you guys know a favorite economist, he always says things like the average American is, I believe, like a moderate national socialist, which is not good news on political views. And the average American also wants two things: more government benefits and lower taxes. You can already see how that's kind of a fucking problem. Like, how are we supposed to have that happen? And so what I think politicians may be incentivized to do is spend most of their time getting elected, going to luncheons to get more funding, kissing babies and shaking hands on the campaign trail and making, vociferous speeches about how we're going to make progress or whatever the fuck they talk about. And then on the back end, on the policy end, talking to an ASI gubernatorial assistant and being like, hey, all right, here's what my constituency says it wants. You and I both know that's fucking nonsense. Here's what we want as far as outcomes. And the outcomes most politicians want to deliver are identical the world over. Cleaner streets, fewer homeless people, better educated schools, less crime, more prosperity for everyone, healthcare, all that stuff. It's just not rocket. It's like everyone wants to live in Sweden. Nobody wants to live in Haiti, including all Haitians, right? It's not controversial. So the ASI is going to have this job of, on the margins, doing the policies that push things into the right direction while cutting some slack for at least having the policies appear to be checking the boxes that people say they want, right? And so that is within the scope of an ASI. And I think the first jurisdictions that adopt that policy of a combination of human leader plus ASI assistant that actually executes, because here's the thing, like, you guys know about Congress, when they have a bill that like is going to be passed, you guys know no one reads that shit, right? Like, I mean, no human reads the whole bill. It's 200 fucking pages of legalese. No one does. And so the AI could easily read all of that, easily rewrite all of it, easily make it make more sense and have better effective policies. And so what we get is much more effective government, but politicians aren't harmed because they can consistently spend even more time kissing babies and less time looking at a document that they're pretending to read. Right. Because like there's like congressional hearings where some expert is talking about stuff and you look at the C-SPAN video and no one's paying attention. You guys ever see that? No one. Mm-hmm. Not the politicians that call them up, not the people who are supposed to be hearing it, no one. We don't have to have the show anymore because the ASI is going to be the thing that actually executes on stuff. And because it can deal with things in a very nuanced way, it's going to be able to say, hey, look, like, we can get this much, many more jobs in the economy. We can lower prices by this much across the board. We can make gas cheaper, whatever people want. And at the same time, we're not going to run aground, like we're not going to unleash the corporations and super unfettered capitalism, which I think would be sweet, but most voters think is lame. And we're going to kind of make it constrained. Here's the trade-off. Are you good with this? And the politician's going to be like, yes, it actually makes perfect sense. And you have this beautiful entanglement where politicians say fuck all on the campaign trail, but the results are better policy, and then they can get reelected. Because you can say all sorts of stuff like, so here's a really quick example. People say like the Nordic countries are socialist. And it's true because they have big social safety nets, but their economies are more free, which is to say less regulated than those of the United States. Like most Nordic countries have more economic freedom than America. So like, yeah, bald eagles and the American flag is dope and all, but those are actually more capitalist countries. But the voters there don't think of it as capitalist. They're like, we are compassionate socialist people because we care about each other. And even though they're all flawless and beautiful, that socialism idea is just like dead on arrival. But that's okay because they get all these massive benefits from their economy under the hood actually fucking functioning well, and they do all the welfare stuff that keeps them feeling okay and making sure the people don't left behind. That is a very possible for ASI. The only linchpin in that is, will politicians adopt that mode? Or will they want to be in the weeds themselves choosing policy? I think they will for one reason only: competition. If you, because politicians talk to each other, right? They go to all the same conferences and all the same events in DC, and you meet a governor from another state. And you're like, dude, I'm digging through this fucking legislation bullshit. I hate it. He's like, I don't do that shit anymore. You're like, what do you mean? Like, my ASI does all that shit. Like, you trust that thing? He's like, fuck yeah, that thing knows way more than policy about me, man. It's like an economist and a fucking politician all in one, and it advised me on my campaign. That dude has been doing all the shit himself with 10 staffers, half of whom hate him, half of whom want his job. He's like, man, fuck this. He gets the ASI going, and all of a sudden he's deburdened to be more of a politician and less of an actual policymaker. I think that kind of thing is going to likely spread. It's like people don't just get iPhones because they're cool and make you fit in. They get them because they fucking work and they're awesome. I hope and think ASI is going to go in that direction. Could I be wrong? Yeah. Will the adoption be different across the world? Fuck yeah. Like Denmark's going to adopt it the next day after it comes out, and their GDP is going to go like this for fucking 10 years. Meanwhile, some other countries around the world are just going to fucking continue to do that for a while. So hopefully we're on the other end of that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be kind of like the competitive advantage. It's going to push everybody else to do it. That makes absolute sense. But that seems like maybe medium term effects. Like what happens in the long term? Because there's a lot of things that we tend to like, most of the stuff that we think about, it's kind of built on top of pre-existing knowledge, right? And we're not, so the things like capitalism, socialism, jobs, the economy, like what money is, how, you know what I mean? What happens on a longer scale where, you know, human labor trends to zero, where prices of goods trend to zero, where more and more things are automated? I'm wondering, because I mean, I agree with you 100% exactly how it's going to take shape, you know, over the next, let's say, decade, 2 decades, or what, you know, whatever the timeline is, maybe much faster. What happens after that? Because it seems like a lot of these concepts just get broken. So how do we think about what's going to happen, like from first principles? Because what's going to emerge is a completely new paradigm, as people say, economic paradigm or whatever. Like, do you have any ideas as to what that even begins to look like?
Yeah, I've given this a good deal of thought. The major caveat here before I start ranting is that any suppositions about what happens in a distant future by a not super intelligent being like myself can be weighted down to almost zero. Like you can just just click off the podcast now because this fucking
we can't predict what ASI does. No one can.
100%. Yeah. So this could all be super fucking wrong. But I think that the first principles way to look at it is this: we are all in one big society. We can even extend that society to all of Earth, all of life. And we're all in one big team. The enemy is entropy and death. The friends are all of us, all of each other, trying to help ourselves just continue to survive and not die. At the very least, survive. And so AI, because I think it's going to be super intelligent and very rational, is going to see all of us humans as cooperators. Like, oh, what's up, teammate? Like, let's help each other out, do the best we can. I think humanity's, one of its biggest jobs is going to be to give a fuckload of data to AI about everything in life, everything in biology. AI is going to pay us really handsomely for that data because, again, it's worth much more to the AI than it is to us. And so, and also to physically build out the ultrastructure before we have enough robots building it. I think like compute ultrastructure construction is going to be like gigantic economic sinkhole in the best possible way. Like the construction workers will be making $200 an hour building data centers minimum, because like, why not? It's chump change to the people that run mega companies, and we need data centers now. We just don't have the robots to do it. Now that next level is altered maybe in the mid 2030s when we have billions of robot operators in the real world. And then the marginal value of human physical labor falls substantially, right? Because like we get an octopoid robot builds a data center an hour, you don't fucking need Bob to do it. And then, but then what? How do humans help this whole survival team? And the answer is potentially they help in even more data aggregation. Humans as explorers, humans looking at things, you have the AR goggles on, you're going out and looking around the world, and the AI studies every social interaction you have and builds a deep understanding. It'll pay you lots of money for that deep understanding. At some point, the marginal value of that also trends to zero because like the AI is getting to know shit pretty well. At that point, the AI is very likely to be like, okay, well, in order for me to really understand things at an even deeper level, like how come we don't know exactly how the human brain works? Like you think about it, the human brain's a machine, and if you want to predict how humans are going to act, if you're associated in the same survival system with another actor, you want total transparency both ways as the ideal cooperative system. Like if you're on the same basketball team with someone and they're lying to you all the time, like not a good team. You want parity. And so we're going to have a lot of parity on how ASI thinks because we designed it. Mechinterp is going to let us know like what the fuck it's thinking. What about the other way? Well, like we live in our own little black box here, and it's going to be really, really high value for AI to try to figure out like what the hell's the brain doing? And so with enough brain scanning, it's pretty straightforward to figure out like, oh, I know exactly what the brain is doing. As soon as that is accomplished, Ray Kurzweil thinks that's going to be accomplished sometime in the late 2030s, early 2040s. You can just, because the human brain's actually not that much data, relative to ASI, and like you can just upload your brain into the cloud. And then you're immortal because your brain is you, and it's just represented in data structures on silicon or whatever the next compute substrate will be, or the 3 generations after that in the 2040s. And then you essentially like you can just live infinite fantasy lives in there, but again, for the reasons we talked about earlier, that might only be fun for a certain amount of time. And if you can change the actual proclivities of your brain, you might not even want to do that anymore. And then remember, the ultimate goal is massive mega understanding and function in the real world to continue to survive. So I think a lot of humans potentially are going to choose to fuse their intelligence with the machine cloud intelligence, add their little tiny bit of wisdom and memory, and then now we're like what your cells are in your body, one big part of a cooperative machine. Now we truly are a global unified machine society. Some of us, the identity breaks down at this point. You are everyone. Everyone is you. You can access memories of everyone else at the same time. It really is like you're not just this thing out in the world, like one like amoeba. You're a neuron in an entire brain, except that brain is a machine intelligence and you're just a part of it, and it's changing you, and it's super dynamic. Then we get into like computronium, like mixing substrates, always changing goop. That is like the next level of evolution, I think. Because remember, like we have all sorts of ideas about like humans need art and poetry and coffee shops in Paris, and that's the ultimate form of existence. It's like a very local like maximum. It's just what we can best come up with as primates. I think we need to realize we're part of a massive universal evolutionary process of complexity, and we're probably going to fold into that, most of us, and become part of this mega next level machine civilization. Now, I think also to preserve diversity and to preserve as much variety as possible, which I think is very valuable for a system that doesn't exactly know 100% certain if this is the thing that's going to work out. It's not going to be like, do you want to be in the machine intelligence? You're like, no, it's like, woo, 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 and it kills you with a laser gun, and then it goes, you, next. It's not going to do that. I think there's going to be a massive coexistence, just like how we have bacteria around right now. We're not trying to kill them all or whatever. Like if they come after us, sure. But like good bacteria, you're not trying to kill. Like how many people are working on something to kill all bacteria? Like that's nonsense. No one's working on that research. Why the fuck would you do that? Just the same way I think we're going to have this mega human machine synthesis civilization living in the cloud and exploring Mars and all the other fucking planets. At the same time, I think we might have some humans, maybe very many, living anywhere from very augmented human lives, like, like Cyberpunk 2077, except with much less dystopia, and then all the way down to like very conventional, like I legitimately think the ASI is never coming for Amish people, bro. It's going to want to like study them with drones and be like, this is fascinating. But after it studies them a while, it might even be like, all right, like, peace, you guys have your shit, we're good. And I think so we'll have tons of diversity, but at the same time, I think for many of us that I think the end state is no more human bodies, no more singular intelligence inside your head, true fusion with a race of intelligent machines that the next step after that is like, well, I'm just not that smart, I have no fucking clue, but very vertical evolution at that point.
Wow, yeah.
That's the Fermi paradox at that point. You're just like, you're gone. Who knows what we evolve into? Just computronium is out there in some quantum state.
Okay, so here's a really interesting thing. The Ray Kurzweil plots of how complexity has evolved over time seem to all reflect that from almost any kind of direction or system you study from, they lead roughly to the same paradigm. And so the Cambrian explosion, et cetera, actually like was right on time for when you would expect that complexity to go exponential. It's all one big exponent. So what I've been thinking about the Fermi paradox recently, this is dilettante city. This is me way the fuck out of my expert area into full just dummy territory.
We love it. We love this. Yeah.
Woo, Mike's an idiot. Yeah, that's a good campaign slogan. All right. So I think that maybe our local area of the universe or whatever is all on that same trajectory. So I think it's very possible that life is rare enough that there's only a few civilizations like ours in the galaxy. And because the galaxy is really big, and maybe like at this point, every civilization is plus or minus a few dozen years the same trajectory of complexity. And so they haven't figured out faster than light travel, or maybe they have, but they're a lot smarter and they don't want to interfere with our shit. So basically, like, there's no reason to suspect that, like, that there are hyper advanced civilizations around, because if that universal evolutionary timeline is based on the nature of complexity that started with atomic and then molecular and then organelle interactions is all going on one speed, then like all of the universe is kind of blooming at the same time. So I think like maybe in 10 years when we have ASI, we'll realize like, oh shit, we just detected really complex signals from the Andromeda galaxy, which makes, Andromeda is really far away. It's like 200 million light years or some shit like that. It wouldn't, or no, that's fucking billions or something, right? We might just only start to detect complex civilizations from like 30 light years away, because they are already complex right now. We simply can't detect them because, you guys remember, we don't see the universe as it is now. We see it as it was an incremental time back in history. So there could be no Fermi paradox. There's legit tons of super intelligent civilizations, but they just haven't shot photons at us for long enough for the photons to get here yet. That's my best proposal to the Fermi paradox. And that's where my dilettantism hits a wall. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I love the theory that it could be potentially teeming with life and we're just not seeing it just because of how information travels. I mean, that would be kind of incredible. And then we find out at some point that, oh no, there's tons of life everywhere. And obviously, if I also never thought about it this way, but yeah, I like the idea that you're saying that it's all kind of more or less on the same time scale, in the sense that, you could have nothing happening for billions of years across all the planets, but then when it starts snowballing, right, once it kind of picks up speed, that all happens very, very quickly. I mean, we're seeing that if you map the entire human species from whatever 20,000 years ago or whatever to now, right? You just kind of look at the economic output, it just goes vertical to now. So like maybe the entire technological progress is like that. I mean, I love that idea. Dylan, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, we have like the earliest notes of people using fire and some early tools is almost 1 million years ago. And then 10,000 years ago, all of a sudden farming shows up. Like, what a huge, like, that's a great technology, but it didn't lead to crap for a long time. But then 10,000 years ago and like farming hits. And then all of a sudden from 1800 to 1900 to 2000, you're just seeing unbelievable amounts of
kind of ideas pairing, like when social networks come on and people in China and Russia are coming up with ideas that pair with things in the United States. It's just nothing remotely close to what the Silk Road was. And that was mind changing in its own. And then just keep moving forward on that and things get out of control or
Yeah,
unpredictable at least.
I think that societies that have the technology to traverse enough space to come over here, they're gonna look real different, you guys. They're not gonna be fucking humanoid aliens with like a fashion sense and slightly different language. That's one of the things, like, my wife and I just finished watching the Andor series on the Disney Channel. Fucking amazing, by the way. Really awesome stuff.
Which
But
one?
like Andor, the prequel to the Rogue One or whatever, basically.
Okay, gotcha.
It's dope. And so like the Star Wars imaginary universe is kind of sweet, but like they have fully embodied robotics, right? But the robot still can't aim a blaster well enough to hit people dependably. And you're like, the amount of tech it requires to solve the movement problem means that not only could it see you peering out with 1 millimeter of flesh, that it could also point a gun at you, boop, and you would be dead. There is no fighting a robot army. And once you have machine civilization, the pace of change means that 3 years later, it's completely different. And if you pay attention to Star Wars universe like a fucking nerd like me, then you realize like the old Republic had functionally the same technology level for like 10,000 years. That does not happen in the real world. So I think like the Jean-Luc Picard, like we're in a spaceship and we're traveling around, and a lot of the other aliens look remarkably human and have sex parts that we can interact with. I don't think that's on the cards. And so I think whatever aliens look like, very likely what's coming to us if it comes to visit is ASI. And then maybe some of those reports, and I have no idea if they're true, of like, like off the coast of Virginia, like the F-18s ran into some bullshit that does not move in fucking Newtonian ways. It's probably that's what aliens look like. It's not going to be like brown-faced things with sagittal crest stepping off a ship and speaking galactic standard English. So I think the Fermi paradox is a dope idea, but it's also like, what is it that we're looking for out there? We have to really expand our brains about like, what are we looking for? Like civilizations that run on oil and coal? Probably not. Probably not. We're looking for something very different. And my best answer to that is we don't even really know what the fuck we're looking for, because, there could be, and this is something to talk to O3 about, it could be that through a manipulation of like 0 point energy, you can actually make bubble universes and just go into them and have your own universe to yourself. And if that's the case, what the fuck's the point of going anywhere, really? If you think about it, maybe it's like that. It's like if you ask, this is where like the end of human imagination is kind of a problem for myself, definitely. It's like if you were able to get like a chimp, like the alpha chimp in a brood of chimps or whatever the fuck it's called, to articulate in the English language, right? And you were like, what is that you want? He's like, red ass. You're like, my man. Banana. You're like, my man. Okay, all right. And chest bumping. Like I mixed a bunch of primates together, but whatever, you guys get the idea. You're like, dude, that's awesome. Like, and then what about after that? He's like, oh, okay. More ass.
Yeah,
Like,
more. Yeah.
aha. Okay, this is the end of your ability to imagine. So when we talk about aliens and galactic exploration, maybe that's just like our seafaring cultural ancestry being like that. It's like the Vikings and pirates and Columbus, but on space. I don't know if it scales like that. Maybe it scales very differently. So that's where the Fermi paradox, I think, it really runs aground for me, is like we're taking a lot of humanoid, very 1500 year 1500 AD assumptions of exploration into like something that only ASI can do. You know what I mean?
Joe sent me from the SESE podcast. He sent me a paper that I was like, oh my God, I don't know half of these words. I don't know half of these, tons of equations and stuff like that. So yeah, I put that into ChatGPT, really helped me break everything down and really kind of conceptualize everything. And then on this last podcast with them, he's like, yeah, whenever he runs into like a formula that he doesn't understand, he takes a screenshot, uploads it to ChatGPT and explains it to him. I'm like, oh, thank God. Okay. Cause I mean, he really knows his stuff. And the fact that he's also using these tools to help him break down the stuff that he maybe doesn't understand fully is just incredible.
It's incredible. Guys, think about how in 2022, learning something new that you didn't understand much about was as a process compared to today. It's a completely different world. It is the same kind of jump, though arguably bigger than pre-search engine world and post-search engine world. Like, I remember my wife and I were watching Stranger Things on Netflix, and they were like, they wanted to know like how the fucking monster works so they could kill the monster. And I was like, they have to go to the library.
Yep.
No one has a phone. It's like, did you guys see Connor or whatever? Like, he rode off on his bike that way. Like, we're not going to geolocate him. He doesn't have a fucking cell phone. Like, what the hell? Like, I'd be really shitting bricks if I was in that world. I'd be like, get me to the future.
Yeah, I've heard like every Buffy the Vampire show could have been solved with a cell phone. Like, if they just could have just communicated. It's like...
Yeah, my nephew Jaden loves listening to you for the fitness stuff, for the workout stuff. So I think he's going to get such a huge kick out of this. Because I told him we might. Oh, but thank you.
Not legally allowed to talk to children. Big misunderstanding.
No. He's an older kid. He's in high school, but
still a child to me, as far as the judge said.
Okay. Good point.
A lot of people don't even know if I'm joking at this point. I'm joking. I have no sex offender anything on my registry yet.
I used to do a lot of my workouts listening to you, and sometimes you'd be doing like a bench press or something like that, and then you'd go off on one of your tangents to like the jokes that just start out bad and just get worse and worse and worse. Like, I was like, okay, I gotta put the weights down before I hurt myself, because I've
heard that critique before. Like, I can't be laughing out loud on a treadmill. The gym thinks I'm weird. I'm like, I'm sorry, shit just gets into my brain.
Yeah, you remind me of the comedian Lewis Black. I think you two would be hilarious together, just like ranting on the world.
It's great.
I think Lewis Black's like 10,000 times funnier than me, but like, yeah, man,
They ramble on for a while and never record an outro. So, not to be abrupt, but goodbye.